so, I was kind of had my eye on it, wondering what it was and when I would hear about it. And finally last week I heard about it, but now you're saying, and what I read last night too, it's going to be fast-tracked now. There's a push to fast-track it, right?
Yes.
And that's what you're concerned about?
I'm very concerned about this agreement overall for a number of reasons. First of all, it's between several nations, most of them in Asia, but it's also with Chile. But it did not include Japan, and that's a bad story for our cattlemen, because that is what we want to accomplish most in international trade, is to get our beef, more of our beef, into Japan. Now all this is, these are these complicated international trade schedules, but what happens in negotiating these treaties is that the administration works with these countries and they set up these schedules, but the problem is that our industrial sector is stronger, and our businesses, and especially our big businesses, kind of dominate the thing. So most of the trade concessions are made in regards to agriculture, and in this case particularly sheep and cattle. Now New Zealand sheep will be able to come in freely, it appears. Our sheep will not be able to go into other countries, but the markets that we most want access to in Asia, namely Japan and China, are not in this particular treaty. So this is very dangerous to our stock growers and to our sheepmen in western South Dakota.
And explain it, because it's a really huge agreement that has been in the making for about 10 years.
Yes, and I've spent a lot of time in my life. When I was in the Senate for 18 years, I served in the Foreign Relations Committee, and I dealt with a lot of these international trade treaties. All of our trade has to go through some kind of a treaty. And we have the NAFTA treaty, for example, with Mexico and Canada, but this is a new major treaty which will involve, it's virtually worldwide, and it will affect tariff schedules, and it will affect the amount of beef or the amount of cars or whatever that come in. For example, we let Japanese cars in very freely, supposedly in exchange for letting some of our products into Japan, but they have not reciprocated. Some of these other countries don't reciprocate. So all these countries, they look upon the United States as a place to market their goods and their agricultural products free of tariff, and they want us not to reciprocate. So I would fight very hard in the Senate to oppose this treaty, or oppose it in its present form, or to get it changed before I would agree to vote for it, so it's more favorable to our western South Dakota ranchers and sheepmen, but also to our citizens, because this involves a lot of other products. It's a comprehensive big trade treaty that we'll be hearing a lot about next year. I think by this time next year everybody will be talking about the Pan-Pacific Trade Agreement, or it'll be called different things. But this is part of this so-called pivot to Asia that President Obama talks about. There's a military side to it, but this is the trade side. But the treaty is being set up in a way that is very favorable to our largest companies, and not to small business, and not to agriculture.
Well, and that's when I was reading about it last night, I got that sense that there's a few multinational corporations that will benefit.
That is correct.
But the trickle down isn't going to do very much for
That is
Americans.
correct. That's the danger here, is
or that there won't be trickle down, really.
Yeah. Our large multinational corporations are almost like countries. They care very little about which country they're doing business in. They are global, and this is really being set up for them. And I'm disappointed in President Obama for yielding so much ground to them. But they give a lot of money in politics, and they control the United States Senate, and that's part of the reason I'm running as an independent, is to try to change that. But I'm not getting any money to run with, so it's hard to get your message out without any money. But the multinational corporations are really working during this election cycle, particularly, to be sure that that people favorable to them are elected. Now everybody talks and gives speeches about that they're against this and so forth, but the fact of the matter is that it'll probably be voted through on a one-vote thing. That's another thing. It's on the fast-track authority in the Senate, which means that it will go through by one vote, and I would be very much opposed to that. If I were there as an independent, I would have enough power to insist on amendments, and that's part of the reason that South Dakota needs an independent senator, because in a closely divided Senate where there are 51 Republicans and 49 Democrats, the 2 or 3 independents are going to have a great deal of power, and we're going to be able to ask for votes on certain things that were not previously voted on, and this is one such example. This is an example of where I could serve South Dakota better than a traditional Republican or Democrat.
Who are the multinational corporations?
Well, multinational corporations are all the big businesses that do business throughout the world.
Do you have any specific names?
Well, I suppose any big company, you name them.
Is Monsanto one of them?
Monsanto would absolutely. Name any big company, and it's usually multinational nowadays because they do business across lines. I suppose John Deere tractor would be an example, even though they're a farm company, a farm implement company, but they sell tractors all over the world. They want to be able to take their tractors into these countries with very little tariffs, and so therefore they are, ironically, John Deere would probably be working against its own interests, although they sell more non-agricultural tractors now than they do tractors. But name any big company or big airline, they are all multinational. Our companies have become such, and that's okay. That's the sign of the time. The globe is getting smaller, but we have to be sure that the tariff schedules help our farmers and ranchers and small businessmen. And I have a unique set of experiences to do that because I know the ropes and I know what's going on. Most people don't even know what's going on with this treaty. It should be a major issue in Senate campaigns and so forth. But based on the way it is now, I would vote against it.
My understanding too is that China is not included in this.
China and Japan are not.
Right,
no.
and so...
And Japan in particular, that's a place where our agricultural products want to go.
Right.
They want our agricultural products, but their government won't allow us.
And is Japan just not included because they're sort of lumped in with China? Because what I was reading was that this was a sort of leaving China out was deliberate.
Yes, and leaving Japan out, essentially. Some countries are in, but they're really not in. And supposedly it was going to be the APEC countries. That's a group of countries over there that Obama had a meeting with. But in the White House there is the trade office, the Office of the President's Trade, and that is doing this treaty, and then it negotiates it, and then it submits it to the Senate as a treaty for approval, and it takes a 2/3 vote in the Senate to approve a treaty. So this is something that could be stopped in the United States Senate. I don't think it can be stopped. I think that the administration is so tied. You know, we have this business now of both corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats. You know, they talk about, usually people think the Republican Party is closer to the big corporations. That's not necessarily true. They're both equally dominated and controlled by them. And for example, some people say the Clintons are sort of corporate Democrats in the sense that they have all these corporations, that they have this foundation and all these meetings and networking, and really the big big multinationals have taken over. And as a sign of the times, they're probably necessary. I mean, a big airline's got to go worldwide, but it doesn't have to charge rates that are unfair to people. So I would like to get back into the Senate so I could fight for South Dakota on this issue.
Now, you changed parties, right?
That is correct. I left the Republican Party very reluctantly, and I'm now an independent. And I did that because I believe that I could be an element of compromise, or I could work with both sides in the Senate and try to end the poisonous fighting between Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. And also, I could be a more powerful senator for South Dakota, because in a closely divided Senate, one can work with both sides, and they need your vote more than they do otherwise. If South Dakota sends a traditional Republican or Democrat, and let me say, everybody running for the Senate, in my opinion, is fine people on both sides. But they accept so much money from this system that we're talking about, that when they get there, they're locked into really tax and spend policies, and into policies that favor large multinational corporations.
And you're saying that isn't the case with you?
That is definitely not the case with me. I'm 72 years of age, so some people say that's too old, but I've pledged to serve only one term should I be elected, 1 6-year term. And if I get into office, I will not have to raise money for the next term. Now, most United States senators spend 1/2 their time raising money for the next term. I'll be able to get 2 terms worth of work done for the people of South Dakota in 1 term, because I'm limited to 1 term, and I won't. This is my last campaign, however it comes out.
All right, and so let's go back to the TPP. So you were saying that it's going to be fast-tracked, but then you said that we'll be looking at it for the next year before it's decided. right?
Well, it is not yet scheduled in the Senate, and it's not yet.
But there's a desire to fast
It
track.
first has to be signed by the president, and that's expected to maybe happen. It's hard to know in January or February, maybe.
Because the negotiations over this have been in secret.
Well, most of them have been. Yes, that's another thing that disappointed me about President Obama. You know, I voted for President Obama for his because I was so afraid that John McCain was going to get us into so many wars. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I'm against all this continuous. We've had 13 years of war in our country, and I'm against all these civil wars where we get involved in. But in any event, one of the President Obama's promises was for more openness in government, and particularly his trade policy office has not been. I cannot find some things out. So, but if I got into the Senate, I would certainly be able to have the power to do that, and that's part of the reason I want to get into the Senate. I've had the experience, and I know how this works, and this is not being handled correctly.
Now, there's some that say that you just changed to an independent so you could perhaps win, or not have so many other candidates to compete with. You talked about going to Washington and being a voice of reason, a balance, perhaps. I'm just wondering, how would you do that then, having been a longtime Republican?
Well, I'm still competing with. I just read in the paper that there's now 3 independents running. I think for this seat. So there's plenty of people. There's plenty of people running. My motivations are idealistic at this stage of the game. I've already. Some people might say you're just running to get the title of senator back. Actually, I've got it for life because I've been in the Senate for 3 terms. When you leave the Senate, you get a letter saying you can use the title senator the rest of your life if you want. And I don't usually. Second of all, they say, well, you're doing it for money. Actually, I'd be taking a cut in pay because with my small adjunct college professor fees that I make in teaching college, plus my pension, I make more money now than I would if I go back into the Senate, and I'll have to give up my pension if I go back into the Senate. Some people say, well, you're doing it to increase your pension. I can't do that because of my because I had my years in Vietnam in combat, which kind of doubled towards the pension, and I was in the Foreign Service of the United States where I worked on international trade. So actually, I will not be able to increase my pension. It's up to the maximum. So I'm running idealistically because I think I can serve. I think maybe I can make a difference. I think I can end some of the poisonous infighting so that decisions can be made, particularly regarding the deficit. While we're talking, the deficit is still rolling up. We need to enhance revenue and reduce spending both. And we need to enhance revenue by raising taxes on the very rich and also eliminating deductions, certain corporate deductions, and in particular we need to reduce foreign military spending. That's something I feel passionately about. And as a Vietnam veteran, I think I can say with some authority that I think we've wasted a lot of American blood and treasure overseas. We still need to be strong defensively. I taught recently as a Fulbright professor in Italy, and I was right adjacent to a U.S. fort there, and that's a very expensive fort. It's World War II equipment. It's not helping our national defense. We should close it or at least relocate it to Ellsworth and enhance the size of Ellsworth, where it would stimulate our own economy here domestically. The point is, there are so many ways we could balance the budget, and we're just not doing it because decisions can't be made in Washington because Republicans and Democrats are just fighting for the sake of fighting.
What do you think about raising the minimum wage?
I'm for it. I'm for raising the minimum wage.
Do you think it's going to put little small businesses out of business?
No, I don't. There should be a training wage. There should be some provision for small business to take people in who do not have training. My first job was at a training wage for $1 an hour, but I do not think it will. I think it will, in some ways, enhance small business because there'll be more money in the community to spend, and the products of small businesses are sold in the community.
All right. Is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I don't think so. Except that it's very hard to run as an independent. I'm finding it. Everybody says to me, it's wonderful that you're running as an independent, but they don't give me any money or they don't help with organization. I'm not complaining, but...
Are you kind of a little bit ignored because everybody's looking at the Republicans and the Democrats in there? Do you feel that, or...?
Probably so, yes.
You know, like you're the third guy and you're sort
yes,
of... Well, we'll talk to him later.
Yes, well, not only the third guy, but there are others, as
Sure,
I understand it, as I read in the paper. So the news media is, I sympathize with you too doing your job, but I thank you very much. And I'm just going to I'm going to do my very best. At the end of this campaign, if I win, I'll gladly serve a term, one term only. But if I don't win, I will feel that I've done everything I can do. I'll be able to go into retirement with my 4 grandchildren and continue to teach in universities. I've taught at 4 South Dakota universities, and adjunct teaching doesn't pay very much, but I find it very rewarding, and so I've got plenty to do. But I decided to offer myself once more if people want me.
All right, well, Senator, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.